Okay, so lesson one, polynomials. A polynomial is a mathematical expression made up of variables, coefficients, and exponents. Okay, and there is one very specific rule that basically determines if something is going to be considered a polynomial. Okay, all of your exponents must be positive whole numbers. Okay, so that means you cannot have decimals, you cannot have fractions, and you cannot have variables for your exponents. Okay, if you have any of those things, then this is no longer considered a polynomial and we call it something else. And we'll actually work with some of these later in the semester. But for right now, what you're going to do to make sure something is a polynomial is you're going to check your exponents and you're going to make sure that they are all positive whole numbers, period. Okay, so let's try a couple. Okay, so number one, is this a polynomial? So go back and check all your exponents, right? We want to make sure that they're all positive whole numbers. All right, so that's a positive whole number, right? And even though there's not an exponent written here on this variable, there is one there, right? We do have that rule about exponents. And believe it or not, there's actually one on this 7 as well. And we're going to get to what that's called and what that exponent actually is. It's pretty cool. So are all of my exponents positive whole numbers? Yes. So this is most definitely a polynomial. All right, number 2. Okay. Again, checking all the exponents. And notice I'm only circling exponents on the variables, right? All of those have an exponent of 1, even though it's not written down. Okay, that's the understood about exponents. If there's no exponent written there, then it's an exponent of 1. And again, we're only looking at the variables. Okay, so yes, that is considered a polynomial. All right, number 3. So take a look at my exponents. Okay, that's an exponent of 1. That's an exponent of -2. So that is not a polynomial because that has a negative exponent. Those are not allowed. All right, and check number 4. All right, again, check the exponents. That has an exponent that is a variable. So no, that does not qualify as a polynomial. And again, we're going to get to those later in the semester. Okay, so it's very important to be able to recognize a polynomial so that we know what we can work with, right? Because what we're doing right now only applies to polynomials. Okay, so the next bit is kind of long. It's a lot of vocabulary. You do definitely need to get it filled in so you can make sure that you've got all the pieces that you need. Okay, and feel free to pause as you go if you need to. Okay, so, and a lot of these are ones you should already know just because of the prefixes. So a monomial, mono means 1. So a polynomial with 1 term is called a monomial. We're actually able to describe it this way. Okay, bi means 2. So binomial is a polynomial with 2 terms. Okay, tri, like triangle and everything else, means 3. So a polynomial with 3 terms. Okay, and then we basically use the term polynomial when there are more than 3 terms. So 4, 5, 8, however many there are. If it's anything bigger than 3, we just use the general term polynomial. Okay. And again, this is just so that we can name them, right? And we're going to get into these a lot more. And to be able to look at you and say, okay, well, we're going to work with this binomial, you need to know that that means we're talking about 2 terms. Okay. Degree. It's another way that we name our polynomials. Your degree is your highest exponent. Okay, whatever has the highest exponent is considered your degree. And again, there are names for these. Okay, so the next few things are names for degrees. And remember, I talked about how we're going to have, there's actually a name for when there is just a number with no variable on it. Okay, so a constant is a fixed value and it is a number that has no exponent. Now, here's the thing. The reason it doesn't have, I don't know why this is being weird. Okay, so no variable. All right, so basically the constant is a degree of 0. Okay, so I don't know if you remember your exponent rules, but there is that rule about how anything that has a degree of 0 basically equals 1. So if I say x to the 0 power, that equals 1. If I say 9 to the 0 power, that equals 1. Okay, anything to the 0 power is 1. Well, what if I have 9x to the 0 power? Right? This 9 and this x, next to each other, no symbol in between, are basically being multiplied, right? Okay, that exponent is on just the x. So this part right here equals 1. So this is basically 9 times 1, which is 9. So when you have a degree of 0, you're basically left with just a number, and we call that our constant term. Okay, so it has a degree of 0 because the variable got canceled out. All right, linear. So in this one, you're going to have a highest degree value of 1. Okay, so when we're talking about, your exponents, again, just like when we're looking at the polynomials, we are specifically looking at the exponents on the variables. Okay, so linear should have been something that you graphed last year, and that's having a highest degree value of 1. Now, quadratic will be something you'll be graphing this year, and this has a highest degree value of 2. All right. And then cubic, and again, we're just going up the line, has a highest degree value of 3. Okay. Anything higher than cubic, we normally just give a number. Okay. As an example, if I want to go higher than 3 and I say 5x to the 9th power, then we're going to just say that the degree equals 9. Right? We're not going to worry about trying to give it a name past cubic. Okay, now these should be some of the words that you already know, again, from last year. A coefficient is a number, right? And it's used to multiply a variable. You're putting a number in front of a variable, and you're basically stating, this one here, if we ignore the 9, this is 5x. That means 5 times x, or if there are 5 x's that you are adding together. Because if y'all remember way back from like elementary school, multiplying just means that you are repeatedly adding something, right? So if I have x plus x, 5 of them, that's going to be 5x. So it's always in front of the variable. Okay, so an expression is a group of terms, okay? Each of those terms, we already talked about this before, right? We already talked about this before on the definition of a polynomial. It's made up of coefficients, constants, and variables, right? and exponents. If I want more than one of these terms, then they have to be separated by addition or subtraction. Okay, only. Those are the only two things that they can be separated by to be considered separate terms. Right, so if I'm talking about a binomial, something that has two terms, then I'm going to have two sets of coefficients and constants and all that separated by an addition or a subtraction symbol. Okay, so there's your thing for a term. And a term can be one single number or letter, or it can be a group of what we've been talking about before, coefficients, variables, and I don't know why this wants to be silly. Okay, exponents. There we go. When you're talking about a single term, all of the pieces in that term are stated to be multiplied, right? Again, if I want to have more than one term, I have to add or subtract them. Okay, last one, I think. Yep, last two. Okay, so standard form, which is something that we're going to be working on today as well. There's a rule about the order that you write these in. Okay, when you're writing a polynomial that has more than one term, okay, you have to put them in order of decreasing degree, right? So that means highest to lowest. And specifically looking at the exponents, right? From highest exponent to lowest exponent. And then I'm sure you've seen this one because you've been solving equations for a few years now. A variable is just a letter used to represent an unknown quantity. Right? That's why we solve equations all the time, because we're always trying to figure out what that unknown quantity is. Well, when you're talking about a polynomial, when we're like adding and subtracting them, we're just going to leave it as a variable, right? We're not going to be solving for anything because there's not going to be equals in any of these yet. Okay, a lot of vocabulary. And again, my recommendation is that you go back and you study this. We will have vocabulary quizzes. You can also go to Quizlet. For those of you who've never done that before, Quizlet or Quiziz. And both of them will have like flashcards. All you have to do is type in like Algebra 1, Unit 1, and you'll get a lot of people that have already made flashcards, and you can play games and you can do just studying on them. But these are all vocabulary terms that you need to know. So best bet, make sure you're studying. Okay. So into the first part of our lesson today is that we're going to be naming our polynomials, okay? And we name them by whatever degree they have, whatever's their highest, and the number of terms that they have, okay? So each polynomial is going to be given two names that describe it, okay? So you could also say not just named, but you are describing them. All right, so let's try a couple and see how we do. Okay, so we are going to define it by, again, the number of terms and the highest exponent, the degree. Okay, so the highest degree, our highest exponent is 2, right? There's the 2 because this one has, a 0. This is the one that's that constant that we talked about, how if you wrote it, you'd be writing it as x to the 0 power. Right? And that's gone because it would just be 1. So highest exponent is 2, and there are 2 terms. I know those are 2 separate terms specifically because they're separated by an addition or subtraction sign. So this is a quadratic because it has a highest degree of 2, and it has 2 terms, so it is a binomial, quadratic binomial. Okay, so that's how we're going to be making sure we describe them. All right, so next one. Notice this one is not in standard form, right? So standard form means that this exponent goes first. It's the highest. So that would be 2x squared. And then in decreasing order means we go 2. That has an exponent of 1. Remember, there's no 1 there, but that's the understood 1. And then this one has the 0. So you're counting down. So minus 6x minus 3. And be careful, that minus is attached to that 3. That minus is attached to that 6. So they have to move with them. Okay, so I now have it in order in standard form, and I can talk about what it is. So highest exponent, again, is 2. And now there are 3 terms. So this is a quadratic trinomial. There we go. Okay. And again, for right now, all we're doing is describing and defining, and I think all we're going to be doing today after that is putting them in standard form. All right. So the next one, okay, really easy. It only has 1 term, so I know it's a monomial, 1 term. Okay, so this is what we were talking about before about the constant. If I were to put a variable on there, the only exponent that would work would be 0, right? Because it makes the x go away and all that's left is the number. So that's why this is considered a constant. And we'll actually talk about this later when we talk about the constant term is always the one that doesn't have a variable on it, right? So this is a constant monomial. 1 term, degree of 0. Okay. So this one, again, take a look. It's not in standard form because standard form says, again, decreasing exponents. Okay, so the first one is good. We can have that one. That's the 3. That's the highest. But this has a degree of 0, and this has a degree of 1. So we have to switch those around. So that should be 1/2 x to the 3rd minus 3x plus 6, right, to get it in correct form. All right, so let's name it. Highest degree is 3, and there are 3 terms. And again, I know there are 3 terms because I have these 2 are separated by a minus, and these 2 are separated by a plus. So that's 1, 2, 3 terms. So this is a cubic for the degree of 3 trinomial. Okay. And yep, we're just going to do this one. Last one. All right. So take a look. It's not in standard form. I know that because this is not my lowest. This is my lowest exponent, and it should be at the end. But I hope you caught it. I can't do anything with this. This one is not a polynomial. And if it's not a polynomial, we can't name it. We can't put it in standard form. We kind of just have to leave it alone because we're not going to be able to do anything with it. Okay, so this is all you're going to be doing today is you are going to be naming them and putting them in standard form. So you get that done. If you want to continue on to the next lesson, you are more than welcome to. This is what is required to be finished. So name them and put them in standard form.